Should the New York Jets be getting involved in a blockbuster NFL trade? Well, coming up on today's edition of the Jets Report, we're going to talk about them trading for Vikings tight end TJ Hockenson and Saints wide receiver Chris Olave. My name is Patrick Siepman, and welcome into today's show. Now, you guys may be asking yourself, well, why would either of these teams, the Vikings or the Saints, be willing to move off one of their premier offensive weapons? I'm going to start off here with why TJ Hockenson. I think there is a good chance that the Minnesota Vikings are at least going to be considering the option of trading TJ Hockenson this offseason, mainly for the reason he's got a pretty hefty contract for the Minnesota Vikings, and they have spent a lot of money in free agency, so maybe they could be trying to move off his deal, and I think they also could be wanting to get younger at that position. Now, why Chris Olave? I don't really see a lot of interest from the Saints side of things in terms of them wanting to move off Olave. Now, obviously, you're going to have to give them an offer that they can't refuse, probably a high second-round pick, and we'll talk about that. But there's just been a lot of conversation on the internet talking about Chris Olave trade ideas. So we'll talk about it and if it makes sense for the New York Jets. But speaking about the New York Jets, I want to get you guys' thoughts on this here before we dive into the TJ Hockenson part here. What player made you fall in love with the New York Jets? Was it a guy when you were growing up, like 10, 12 years old, that you just loved watching him play football? Really curious to see what you guys got to say on this one. So let me know, what player made you fall in love with the New York Jets? So we can start off with the TJ Hockenson portion here. And the trade idea I cooked up, and I think this would be pretty fair on both sides. I don't know if the Vikes would be willing to move off Hawk for just a third-round pick, but he is, on the tail half of his prime of his NFL career. So I think the trade value of this would be a third-round pick in this year's draft class, and also the Vikings have very limited draft capital, only 4 picks, the least amount of picks out of the entire NFL. So maybe that also is some reason why they want to move off TJ Hockenson. So it would just be a 2025 third-round pick, number 73, and the Jets would be getting TJ Hockenson. Now, the financial side of this is you would be taking on his base salary plus his roster bonuses. So that's how it equates for the next 3 seasons. This upcoming year, it would only be $11.1 million. 2026, $15.9 million. And then in 2027, $17.9 million. So a very, I'm going to say, manageable contract for a damn near borderline top 5 tight end. And yes, the production for TJ Hockenson, especially this past season, was not the best. Did not find the end zone in 10 games. Now, he was coming off that torn ACL. He suffered back in the week 16 of the 2023 season, but he was still trying to get his feet under him for the majority of the 24 season. Really came on the scene strong at the tail half of the season. I think just with having a full off season just to get his body right and get that ACL, 110%, I think we could see a better version of Hawk than we have honestly seen over the last couple of seasons. And, why it makes sense for the Jets and Vikings to engage in this, I think number one, just the Jets need a tight end. And, there are obviously a lot of reports about them, possibly getting Tyler Warren, as they actually are the favorite, according to DraftKings, to draft the Penn State tight end. But they have a massive need at that position. And I think it does make sense if they, maybe they're not sold on Tyler Warren up in that front office where you go trade for a proven commodity, a proven top 5 tight end in the National Football League in TJ Hockenson. But it also gives them flexibility at pick number 7. Because I do think if Tyler Warren's on the board and you still have that massive need at that tight end spot, I almost think it's an auto pick for the New York Jets. But if you go trade for Hawk, send that third-round pick, and then you go draft an Armin Membu, or maybe you want to, reach on a guy like a Will Johnson, or what if like a Mason Graham falls to you, I think that does give you some flexibility at that pick. And still with Justin Fields being a younger quarterback, having that safety blanket in a star tight end, I think is massive. And especially with, possibly the Jets running a lot more RPO this season, I think Hawk could be, a great option to turn those 3-yard routes into 7-yard gains, just trying to, dink and dunk your way up the football field. Hawk just adds that value to an offense, and he would make immediate impact. I'm in the believer that Tyler Warren would walk in the league, be a top 5 tight end. But let's just say they don't believe that, and they think it would take a longer time for him to develop, because besides the past couple of years, we're seeing guys like Laporta, Tucker Kraft, Brock Bowers really hit the scene right away in the rookie year. Before that, it took these tight ends a couple of years to get up to speed in the NFL world, where if you would trade for a guy like Hockenson, he would step in and make immediate impact for this offense. And I do think the Vikings would have some interest in this. I think, Yes, it would probably be less than 5% the Vikes would be willing to move off him. But let's just say the Vikings, they're turning the keys over to J.J. McCarthy. If they think they could go land a Colston Loveland at pick number 24, maybe they would move off Hawk, get a tight end on a rookie deal. I just think this could be like the blockbuster trade of the offseason that we don't see coming. But I'll ask you guys, would you accept this trade? T.J. Hockenson for a 2025 third-round pick, that being pick number 72. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments section. Give me an A for accept. Give me a D for decline. You guys sound off, and let me know if you do this deal down below in the comments section. All right, let's talk about former Ohio State wide receiver here, Chris Olave. Could the Jets trade for him? I think it's unlikely. For the main reason, I obviously think the Jets would have interest in Chris Olave. Young wide receiver, you could pair him up with Garrett Wilson and Justin Fields, but I think it's incredibly unlikely that the Saints would be down to move off Chris Olave because, the Saints, they have been making a lot of these moves this offseason where it seems like they're going to try to win a good amount of football games next season. Now, will they be able to? Jury's still out on that one, but the way they're setting up these contracts, they're almost viewing 2025 as a culture-setting year. And if you would trade away Chris Olave, I don't think that would be the smartest move on their part. But if you would throw them an offer where maybe they can't refuse, or at least it just causes them to have like a 5-hour, possibly like a week meeting about this, I think it would have to be for a second-round pick. And main reason for this is, the Saints are going to have to pay Chris Olave very, very soon. And maybe they could be willing to move off him for a second-round pick number 42, a really good pick in this year's draft. It'll give the Saints some flexibility to kind of build for the future. But again, I think it's unlikely that New Orleans would be willing to move off, a fan favorite, and really, you can make an argument, probably the best football player on their team. And, the production over the last 3 years, obviously dealing with that concussion last season, he wasn't able to stay healthy. But, man, that 2023 season, he was awesome. Going for over 1,100 yards in 16 games played, 87 receptions, 5 touchdowns. I think Olave would be an ideal and one of the best wide receiver twos in the league next to Garrett Wilson. And I'll say this, you already know Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson would be in on this. Like if new GM Darren Moogie said, hey, we're going to give up a premium draft pick in pick number 42 for for Chris Olave, I know Justin Fields and Garrett Wilson would be all in. They all played together at college. And actually Olave's stats with Fields when they're at Ohio State, ridiculous. Almost 100 catches, 1,500 plus yards, 19 touchdowns, and average 15.9 yards per catch. So having that connection with not just only Garrett Wilson, but also Chris Olave, that would get you the best version of Justin Fields. So my take on it, if it takes a second-round pick to get this deal done, I am doing this deal in a heartbeat. I understand it's a premium draft pick, and you're going to have to pay Olave, but I think he's a special wide receiver. He has the connection with the quarterback. He's got that connection with the receiver on the other side of the field in Garrett Wilson, and he's just a very talented football player. So if it is only a second-round pick, again, I don't know if the Saints would do that. I think they want to keep him. I think you're going to have to overpay for a guy like Chris Olave, but I'll tell you what, it would make your new franchise quarterback a whole lot happier if you had number 12 rocking that Jets green every single Sunday. But I'll ask you guys this. If you had to pick one to trade for, who would it be? Give me an 87 for T.J. Hockenson or give me a 12 for Chris Olave. If I had to pick between these two, I know it would cost them, a better pick to go get Olave, but he's younger, and obviously you would have to pay him. So that's another downside to this, but I think it would rock out with Chris Olave. But, hey, you guys let me know. Pick one to trade for down below in the comments section. If you guys also want more NFL content on your Twitter or X timeline, hit me up over there. The handle is at the bottom of your screen right now, at Pat Sieps. If you guys give me a follow, I'll give you guys a follow right back. But we'll see you guys next time. As always, go Jets.